So we've reached the end of the module. Hurrah! Your assessment is on, well, tomorrow morning. Okay. So I hope you have everything ready by then. What I want to do today is I want to go through, I will basically go through all of the exam questions, and I will tell you what you need to concentrate and make sure that you definitely know, so that you have a better chance of doing much better in the exam in January. All right. Is the exam timetable out? Can you see it? So when is your exam for this? Friday? Friday of the first week? Okay, 12th of January. Okay, so is it 9 o'clock in the morning? What? Okay, that's fine. You'll have to wake up early. Okay, so Friday, 12th of January. So things you need to know. So the exam will be 50 questions. There are multiple choice, multiple response. If there are multiple choice, it's a square, it's a round button. If there are multiple response, it's a square button. Special consideration for my multiple response questions, you might actually need to select all of the answers. All right, there might, I do this. Not often, but I do. Okay, so if you think that all of the answers are correct, don't chicken out and say this is impossible. They might actually all be correct. All right. You will also get fill in the gaps questions, so you might have to type in a couple of commands, so make sure that you know and remember commands. Also, this exam is open book. This means that you can have a piece of paper with you. So you can have an A4 piece of paper, double-sided, and you can either write or print onto it whatever you like. Okay, so commands that you might not easily remember, directories with locations of files and important configuration scripts and everything that you think you might not remember, then you are perfectly, within your rights to have this written. And like you said, again, you can print this as well, yes? So you can print in tiny, tiny letters and have like your entire logbook in 2 pages if you want. All right, so it's fine. What I do care about is that that you understand everything, not that you can remember a ridiculous long command to do something. Okay, so it is an open book. You'll have different types of questions in there. There are 50 questions for 1 hour, but most of the questions are pretty quick. All right, there will be a couple of questions that might be networking questions, and you might have to calculate a subnet mask or an IP address, or convert an IP address from decimal to binary or whatnot. These are the ones that will take some time. So in order to tackle this exam as efficiently as possible, what I want you to do is this. I want you to log into the exam, start it. On the right-hand side of your browser, there will be a navigation panel. So you will be able to see numbers 1 to 50 there. These are all the questions. You have the first question in front of you. Do you know the answer straight away? Answer it, move on to the second question. Do you know the answer immediately and you're sure about it? If not, leave it, move on to question number 3. Do the same. Whiz through all of the questions, and then you will get to question 50 within 5 or 7 minutes. All right, and then you will know how many of the questions you've actually answered and and you're confident with, and then you can take your time, all of the rest of the time, to answer the rest of the questions. Of course, this can work in 2 ways. Either you've answered lots of questions and you're happy with it and you're confident, and then you just do the rest of the questions, or you've answered very few questions and you start panicking. Don't start panicking. Repeat the process again. Go back to the first question. Go through the questions again. If you think that you're relatively confident with some of them, repeat them again. You can navigate and you can go back and forth in the questions as much as you like. There's no limitation or anything. Okay. And you can have as many attempts as you like in the specific question. You can choose one answer, and then if you change your mind, you can go back and change it, and it doesn't matter. The questions are only finalized when you hit submit. And after you hit submit, it will ask you to verify that are you sure you want to submit your attempt and so on, and it will give you a recap of all of the questions that you've answered. All right, so be smart about how you navigate your way through the exam, and that will give you the best result in the exam itself. Okay, so I have triple checked the questions this time for spelling mistakes and everything, so it should be fine. There shouldn't be anything weird about them. However, if there is something weird about them that you don't understand, you can ask one of the invigilators. So if it's a typo or if it's something like that, then they will help you. I will not be in the exam. However, I will be over my phone and online because I'll be abroad. And I can answer questions if one of the invigilators asks me about it. Okay, so if it is something that seems to blatantly be a mistake in the question itself, although because I am aware I have really triple checked everything, so this should really be bulletproof as an exam, all right, then they will ask me, all right. So by the time, until you get an answer, move on to another question and then get back to that one. And if it is something that's horribly important, then the invigilator will make an announcement in the class and say, this question, that thing should be that thing. Okay, so don't worry about that either. I think you should all be in the same exam center, in the same location, because there's very few of you. So you should all be in one place. You should have like 2 or 3 invigilators, and that should be it. Okay. Make sure, please, that you get to the exam at least 15 to 20 minutes before it starts. All right, because we will start letting you in the class before the actual start time. And the good news is that this year, I think from this exam period, we're piloting not having name labels on the desks. So you don't have to go in and start searching for your name and sit. You can sit wherever you like. Okay, ideally next to your best friend so that you can sit off each other. Because of this, everybody will be extra vigilant from now on. Yes, I will be sad that I will miss this because it is my favorite sport. Jesus, it's not. I take it back. But yes, so yes, you can sit wherever you like. So that will speed things up. You won't have to go around the class looking for your name and everything else. Okay. Have the A4 piece of paper double-sided with you. Have a pen if you need to. You will be provided with a blank piece of paper so that you can make calculations or take notes or whatever you like as well. Okay. And basically anything you need, just raise your hand and the invigilator will come and have a look. Now the questions themselves. So what you need to know, let's see. So I'm looking at, okay, so in Open Nebula, I want you to know the differences between images and templates. Okay, an image is essentially a hard drive. All right, it can be a DVD image, for example, so it can be a DVD disk, or it can be a blank hard drive, or it can be the hard drive from which you boot your operating system. Okay, whereas the template is essentially the recipe that helps you put together the virtual machine. It's the settings of the virtual machine itself. So how many CPU cores you're going to have, how much RAM, which network cards to use, which hard drive to use, architecture of the host, and so on and so forth. In VirtualBox, I want you to know what the VBoxNet devices are. Okay, so are they network cards? Where are they configured? What are our options? So what are the possible different configurations that we can have with them, and so on. I might give you a configuration file, right? And I might ask you something about that configuration file. So maybe one of the files that live in etc. sysconfig network scripts that configure all of your network cards and everything. So I might give you one of those files and say, okay, so which network card are we configuring in this file? Or are we bridging, or are we NATing, or are we having this network card in this file start up as a normal network card, and so on. So you need to know what those configuration files actually do. The different types of networking that you can have in VirtualBox. Okay, so you can have bridge, you can have NATed, you can have host only, you can have internal, and so on. The process for changing the one admin password in Open Nebula. Okay, so you need to remember that in Open Nebula, if you can change your password simply by editing the password file in the var directory, in the home directory of the user, before you start the services. Okay, so before you start Open Nebula itself. But once you run Open Nebula, you will then need to change the password through the terminal with the one passwd command in there. Otherwise, changing the contents of the file itself will not do anything for the password itself. how do we install stuff? How do we install programs in CentOS? Okay, and specifically the procedure that we followed in order to install anything that we had to install, like VMware or VirtualBox or any other services that you might have needed, like DHCP or whatnot, on the operating system. So I want you to make sure that you know that you can install something from source, or you can install something with a YAM from the network, or you can do a YAM local install, which is a network assisted local installation, and so on. Yes. Yes. Okay, so you need to know the installation methods. You need to know definitions. All right, so if I ask you what is OpenNebula, you need to be able to answer and say, you know, it's a cloud software, pretty much. Okay. Actions that you need to follow in order to do something. So how do you create a virtual machine inside OpenNebula? All right. So you need to create a template, you need to create an image, you need to set up the networking, you need to instantiate the virtual machine and so on. And you need to know the correct order for these tasks to happen for it to work correctly. I've had debates about this in the past. I've had debates about Kickstart with this question in the past. Okay. Yes, there might be more than one ways of doing it. Okay. With OpenNebula specifically that I'm asking here, there isn't. All right. You need to follow the order that the tasks are laid out in the lab sheet here as we did it. Okay. So you need to make sure that the host is there for the virtualization. You need to make sure that the networking is there. You need to create some images and use them. You need to create a template for the VM, and then you need to start it and so on. Yes. Sorry? Yes, like what do you need? Like what is the order? What items, what components of it do you need to configure so that you can run a virtual machine in OpenNebula in the end? Yeah. We then have, okay, so what characteristics of the virtual machines that we're building, whether in VirtualBox, on VMware, or even in OpenNebula itself, are available for us to choose from, to change characteristics like how many CPU cores, how much RAM, how many hard drives and which ones, and so on. Locations of directories. Okay, so for example, in OpenNebula, where do the data stores live? All right. And generally, I mean, this is something that you can write, take notes in your piece of paper if you want to. Okay, but it could be efficient for you to actually know where everything is. Yeah. Things like in OpenNebula, what specific services actually do. So what does Sandstone actually do? What does the scheduler actually do? What are their purpose in life in the software? Images, persistent, non-persistent, what it means, and if they pose any limitations. So for example, if you start a virtual machine using a persistent image, you cannot start any other virtual machine, instantiate another virtual machine from it using the same persistent image. Okay, because it's only one disk and you're writing on it straight away, so you cannot be writing onto it from two different virtual machines. Acronyms, because we're IT people, things like what does VDC mean in OpenNebula? Yeah. Okay. So how do the services run in OpenNebula? So how does the front end run, and what else do you need for it? So is there a web interface? Do you run everything from a command line? Can you do either or both, and so on? Different modes of networking that OpenNebula actually supports. Okay, so we used Open vSwitch, but there are other ways, there are other options available in OpenNebula itself as well. Okay, so I want you to go into the networks area and check and see when you create a new network card, what sort of network card can you actually create in there. So I want you to know the options available for you in there. Definitions. What is a physical machine? What is a hypervisor? What is a virtual machine? What is an instantiated virtual machine inside OpenNebula? What is a virtual machine template instead? Okay. Again, locations of files within the operating system itself. Yes, so CentOS has the ability to have repositories in order to install software from them. So in order for us to install OpenNebula, we had to create a new repo file, a new repository for OpenNebula. Where did we save that? How did we use it? And what was the process to create that repo? So we had to create a file, what's in that file, so there's like a link to where the actual download exists, and so on. Authentication modes, authentication methods supported by OpenNebula. So can you authenticate through LDAP? Can you just do NIS? Can you do SSH only or whatnot? VMware, I want you to know in great detail how the networking actually works. So I want you to know which the default network card on the system is for each different mode of networking. So for example, for NATing, VMnet 8 is the default network card in the system. Okay, so I want you to know all of them. All of the obvious VSCTL commands that we've used in Open vSwitch. Yes, add bridge, add interface, add port. How do they actually work? What is their structure in order to use them? Okay, you get them straight from the lab sheet or from your logbook, and I want you to know exactly what they do. So OVS essentially builds bridges, and we add ports to those bridges that connect the network cards in our system and to the outside world. I want you to know where you can go and download pre-configured virtual machines, especially in OpenNebula. I want you to know the details of the installation of OpenNebula. So does everything need to be in one place, or can you have different pieces of the software on different computers, on different servers? So can you have one or multiple virtualization hosts, and do they need to have the Sandstone executable on them, or can it exist separately somewhere else? Yeah. Types of hypervisors supported by OpenNebula. So what types of virtual machines can we start? So by default, we use KVM in order to start up the virtual machines in our systems. I want you to know all of the types that OpenNebula actually supports. Okay. There is a little bit of an overlap in the questions. That's why I'm skipping a few, okay? One admin password. Where do we configure it when we first install OpenNebula? Yeah, so I want the location. I want you to know where the location is. So capabilities of a cloud user in OpenNebula. So if you remember, we have three different levels of users that we can have. So we can have the system admin, which is the one admin account. We can have a VDC admin, which is an administrator of a part of the cloud that has specific permissions to do stuff. And then finally, we have the end user in the cloud, who's pretty much allowed only to basically start and run and use virtual machines provided in the cloud. Okay. And pertaining to that, I want you to know the ranking with regards to privilege. Yeah, so the one admin account, so the system admin user has the most privileges in the system, and then the VDC admin, and then the cloud user is the one with the least rights. What capabilities can a group admin have, or a VDC admin have in Open Nebula? The correct answer is pretty much whatever one admin lets him to do. Yeah, it's not something fixed. Dimensioning of a cloud. When we're talking about dimensioning of a cloud, what do we mean? So we mean the characteristics that we can alter with regards to the performance capabilities of the cloud. So how many CPUs it can have, how much memory it can have, what sort of network cards and network connectivity it will have, and so on. I also want you to definitely read that intro to Open Nebula file that we have on the first week of Open Nebula. Okay, it has a more general theory and knowledge about how Open Nebula works and what it is and everything. All right, I definitely want you to know what we can do with regards to the operating system and what the solution actually does. All right, so there is a question in there which pertains to one of the figures in that file that you need to know. It's basically the one that gives us the skeleton or the structure of what a cloud in Open Nebula actually looks like, where everything lives. So where's the virtualization host, where's the networking infrastructure, where the virtual machines are, and so on. Okay, so it's a lovely question. You just drag and drop the pictures into the right place. It's like a puzzle. It's great. I like puzzles. Okay, so little details like, for example, when you create a data block in Open Nebula, what is the default unit to measure it? Is it in megabytes? Is it in gigabytes? And what can you do with it? Default location of files for VMware, like where do the VMware virtual machines actually live by default if you don't do anything to them. Okay, they'll be in your home folder and in the VMware directory. Again, the three default networks of operation of VMware. So remember, in VMware, by default, you only get NAT, bridge, host only. Okay. More specifically in VMware and Linux. Fine, yes. Because I realized lately that VMware for Windows actually has a custom networking mode. And I honestly think that they took the idea from us, but never mind. So yes, in Linux, the three default modes are NAT, bridge, host only for VMware. Suspend, power off, stop, and all of the other options of changing the state of a virtual machine that's been instantiated in Open Nebula. So what are the differences? There's like a little table in the notes that tells you what each of these buttons does. So I want you to know that table. All right. How do all of the virtual machines and all of the individual components of Open Nebula actually talk to each other in the system in the background? Okay, so why do we need to have passwordless SSH into Open Nebula working correctly? Yeah. There is a question about routing. I want you to know what OSPF is, what Zebra is, what Quagga is. Basic stuff. I want you to know the exact location of where Sandstone can be accessed on. So this localhost 9869 business or whatever it is. Okay, so I want you to remember the port and the address. What kind of database does Open Nebula actually use? okay, for its operation. Characteristics of a VMware virtual machine that you can change after it's been created, so after you've started the virtual machine and everything. Okay. Details about the installation of the front end of OpenNebula. Does it need to be installed somewhere specifically? Are there any rules with regards to where it's installed and how it actually works and so on? We install it because we only use one computer in the cloud. In the lab, we install it on the same computer that does everything. So our computer is the data stores, it is the visualization host as well, and it is the OpenNebula running computer as well. But is this necessary, or can we have different configurations with that as well? Cloning virtual machines in Linux, so in VirtualBox versus in VMware. Okay, how do the two hypervisors support this feature, if they do at all? The different types of data stores in OpenNebula. We have file, we have system, okay, and we have image. So I want you to know what each of them does, and when you start a virtual machine, what happens. So an image that you're using gets transferred from one data store to another, so that it's a running virtual machine, so it's a running image somewhere else, and so on. And that's it. So yes, concentrate on these. So these are pretty much what you need to know for the exam itself. All right, I am recording this, so you can go back to this if you want to revise later in January and just make sure. But basically, in the exam, everything will be from what we've done in the labs. All right, there won't be anything from that's not going to be in your logbook. The only thing possibly that will not be in your logbook will be that first document explaining the theory behind OpenNebula and what OpenNebula actually is and all of the features that it has. All right. So just make sure that you read everything that's on Moodle and you know all of the characteristics of the software that we're using and so on. All right. Do you have any questions about all this? No? Okay. So as for the logbooks, so tomorrow our assessment starts at 10 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so just make sure that you're here at 10. All right. I will start from that corner. There aren't many of you. I think we should be done within about an hour with everybody. Plus, most of you know what you're doing, so I should just scroll through the logbooks and that's it. Yeah. Give you all your A's and go home. Yes. Sorry? Today is for network service and services in the afternoon, 2 o'clock, with Linda. Yeah? We'll both be here. Okay. So cloud computing logbooks tomorrow. Network service and services, if you're doing it with me, today, 2 o'clock. Be here. Yeah? All right. Thank you very much.